Okay, welcome everybody to my birthday party. I was planning on not having an event today because of the fact that it's a holiday weekend still, but everybody said no, no, we got to have a birthday party for you. So, am I to turn down a birthday party? Oh, heck no. I was thinking today about this global community that we've got here. People are coming from all over the place. Sabina is here from Slovenia. People from all around the U.S. Perhaps my rep in Portugal will show up as well as perhaps our good friend Margareta. We'll see what happens, but I just appreciate you all showing up today. I think we'll wait a little bit more to open presents, or as my kids would say, present time. I will wait a little bit, Glenn, so that more people can, and Eric, so that people can see the things that you've sent. But in the meantime, I'm going to share my screen, share some pictures of my family from my 80th birthday party 2 years ago. This is my family. I have 6 sons, 4 daughter-in-laws, 3 girlfriends, not my girlfriends, my sons and grandsons' girlfriends, and 13 grandkids. That's the whole family, and we were all together for 2 or 3 days back 2 years ago. We had a professional photographer come and take a bunch of pictures. This is something that my 6 sons have done for years whenever they all get together. The grandkids thought that was such a great idea that they had to build a pyramid. This is 13 people in a pyramid, and I must tell you, the youngest boy on top is being held safely in place from behind. That's the group. When my wife had her problems with a fall and a concussion back a month or so before Thanksgiving, the boys have been coming and helping out here a whole lot. My number 5 son is the closest to us. He's in Wilmington, Delaware. He was here for his mom's birthday on the 21st and helping us get things situated around the house. He's here, came in last night, and he's going to leave Saturday, but he's actually working in his company's office in York at the moment. One of the things that the guys did besides helping us to get things like the top bunk bed from upstairs down into the dining room, so my wife could sleep on a bed downstairs because she wasn't able to go up the stairs. We also had a stair lift put in, which has worked out very well. So now we're both able to, go upstairs and sleep in our regular bed. We're figuring that come in sometime in spring. I don't know exactly when, and nobody does, because we're like 38th on a waiting list to get into a senior independent living apartment. Having been married for 57 years, tremendous amount of stuff. To interrupt myself and say, welcome Harriet and Sarah. Glad to see you both here.
Hi, Al. Happy birthday.
Thank you, thank you. Because of that, we've got to get rid of a lot of stuff. So the boys have been helping us to, get some of that stuff sorted out and everything. But my biggest problem is knowing that someday I would become famous. I have saved everything that I have ever done in my professional life, as well as various stages of my life, college and all that sort of thing. So I've been going through that boxes after boxes, big tall boxes that are, like this wide and this wide and, 4 or 5 feet tall, but also, regular boxes, looking at all of this stuff. And I mean, I swear some of the stuff I don't even remember doing it. I'm going to be sharing my story with you, part of it today. I figure to tell 82 years of Big Al's life, you got to have at least 4 or 5 episodes. So today we're going to start. Anyway, I have all of this stuff to go through, and I'm going to try to photograph it, keep it that way and not keep dozens of copies of things and everything, because of the fact that, when I'm gone, I don't want to stick my kids with having to go through all of this stuff. because it won't mean as much to them. Today we're going to go from my childhood to just before going to New York. So we'll go through that in a little bit. Yeah, I think it's fun to share this stuff and also to have you get to see a little bit more of what I feel a very fortunate career. Not only that I can still be working at 82, but just the fact that I've had many opportunities over the years. So I'm going to be sharing some of that stuff with you. I don't know. I'm getting impatient here, Glenn and Eric. Should I be opening some presents from you guys?
It's up to you, baby.
Okay, well, I guess we will share the screen, and I will open first the recording. It's called 82 Years Young.
At the kitchen table with a crayon in hand, drawing at 2 already understands. By 4 years old he knew what he'd do, working in New York, his future in view.
Making pictures for a living, having them printed too. Seeing his art come through the way he meant it to.
82 years young, and still looking ahead, still chasing the spark that's living in his head. Time never caught him, it just tagged along. Yeah, 82 years young, 82 years young.
Life magazine, double-page spread, the exact dream he pictured in his head. Work shown exactly, clean and clear. Pictures carry meaning loud and clear. The goal was always get it right,
So the image made its point at first sight. 82 years young, and still looking ahead, still chasing the spark that's living in his head. Time never caught him, it just tagged along. Yeah, 82 years young, 82 years young. 62 years in, still learning new tools. Same curiosity, different rules. From ink to pixels, from pixels to prompts. Still asking questions, still taking the shots.
experiment, 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 that's what you do. Sharing what he's learned so others break through.
With Judy beside him, steady and true. 6 sons, generations coming through. If there's a reason the fire still runs, he never stopped being curious once it begun. 82 years young, and still looking ahead, still chasing the spark that's living in his head. Time never caught him, it just tagged along. Yeah, 82 years young, 82 years young.
Thank you, Eric. That was great.
Yay! Oh my God. Oh my God.
Yeah, Glenn and I wanted to do something special for you, so we did that, and the upcoming video whenever you care to share that as well.
Yeah, I'll show that next, but I just wanted to say you captured enough of my life story that maybe I really don't have to show the pictures now.
Well, you have a music track. You can do your own home video against it now.
Yeah, well, that's terrific. Yeah, I can have that be my background music. That's great. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Let me share again, and I'll share the video that Glenn sent.
Big Al. Today we're celebrating 82 years of curiosity, creativity, and a life built on getting things right.
All right, before we go any further, I just want to establish a baseline here. I'm called Big Al because I live in a swamp in Texas. I'm 13 feet long, and I weigh half a ton. That's the resume.
From a very early age, you knew what you wanted to do.
Absolutely. I wanted to sit perfectly still, conserve energy, and let the world come to me. Which, if I'm being honest, has worked out beautifully.
You followed that focus into a career built on images, crafted carefully, exactly as you imagined them.
Nothing in my life has ever turned out exactly as I imagined it. It's mostly been patience, timing, and a strong bite radius.
Your work was published and seen by millions.
If millions of people have seen me, it was unplanned, slightly chaotic, and followed by shouting. Very different vibe.
Even after decades, you kept learning. New tools, new ways of working, always experimenting.
I admire that. I personally stopped experimenting years ago and committed to what I'm good at, which is floating and intimidation.
And beyond the work, you built a life, a partner, 6 sons, a legacy.
Okay, now we've officially crossed into someone else's biography. An impressive one, I'll add, but not mine. I don't know this other Big Al, but based on what you're saying, he made outstanding choices, stayed curious for 82 years, and somehow avoided becoming cynical, which is remarkable. I mostly avoided land.
Happy 82nd birthday, Big Al.
Yes, happy birthday to that Big Al. But just so we're clear, this Big Al is doing just fine.
I have to say, my God, you are so good, guys, and it's so, yeah. Thank you for sharing this, Big Al.
I have a feeling I'm going to play both of those things over and over and over again.
Well, enjoy it, Big Al.
That was great. Yeah, you remember Albert the Alligator in Pogo comics in the newspapers, funny papers? That was immediately what I thought of when I saw that alligator. But I'm glad to know that he had a similar existence, but deviated a bit.
Just a little quick background on that. Just out of curiosity, just on a whim, as I'm sure we all do, I just asked Siri, who is Big Al? Just out of curiosity to see what it would say. And little did I know to find out that there's actually this alligator in Texas called Big Al, who's 13 feet long and weighs half a ton. And I told that to Glenn, and we said, well, there it is. We have to use that. And then we developed the spot.
No, that's great. That's great. Since you're there right now, I just want to mention to people something that I gave to you a while back that was a surprise. And that was, my wife does these word puzzles where you circle words, on the angles and straighten and so on and so forth. And she came across in this one book, one that the words were Aflac, Eric David, a bunch of other things related to the fact that Eric had done this Aflac commercials. And it had all these different words to be found, and made a picture of that and sent it to him because he was not aware of it existing. That was kind of a fun little surprise for him.
It sure was. It was great. Thank you.
Well, unless you want to have me continue to play those two things over and over again, I think I will go on to showing slideshow about my early life and career. I decided what was I going to name this show. My favorite answer when somebody says to me, "How are you doing?" or "How have you been?" and things like that, as people always do, But my favorite answer, which always throws them for a loop, is, well, it all started back when I was a child. Do you want to hear this story? So, anyway, I decided that's what I would call this, since that's what I'm doing, is taking you back to when I was a child. These are pictures by my mother. I wanted to show that because she's the one that started teaching me to draw when I was 2. I need to explain, in 1934, the picture on the right She's 18 years old and never had any art training at that point. Why Thelma Bland? Because, well, I have to give you just a little bit more background on her, and that is that her mother was an alcoholic during Prohibition, and she literally died of bad booze at age 32. And so my mother was taken out of school in 7th grade in order to take care of the 3 younger kids, including an infant. And this was, of course, during the Depression. And she would, escape into these idyllic girl books like Girl of the Limberlost and Freckles and those kind of books. And it's not surprising that, like, when she was 16, she met this guy who happened to be a carny. He worked in a carnival. And, I don't know about you, but I kind of think of that as kind of escaping from the world. And I think that's what she was intrigued by. Well, she eventually married him. She was 18 when she got married. They were married for only a year, and the reason she was married for only a year is because just because he got married didn't mean that he was going to stop fooling around. So that was a short-lived, time. As you see, she was, using her name there for at least a couple of years. 34, she was married to him. But I just think these things are neat pictures. For somebody who's untrained but has a vivid imagination and talent. The girl on the right was my oldest cousin, Shirley, and Shirley unfortunately died at age 13. The baby reminds me of the fact that within a month of Shirley's death, Aunt Alice had a baby that was dead within a week. So she lost 2 children within a month's time. Now you see she's signing at Thelma Gresswitz, so she's married to my dad now, which would be around 1941, 41, 42. I'm not going to go into the story about how my parents met. It's an unbelievable story. Well, now that I've said that, maybe I will give you a short version of it. My dad moved to Detroit from St. Louis after his divorce and left his wife and a son and daughter down there. And he came up to Detroit, and he'd been working on the assembly line of Ford Motor Company since the assembly line concept was 2 years old. And so, anyways, he got into a men's apartment that was an alleyway and a store away from Werner Highway, where he could catch a streetcar and go to the Ford plant. And the store that was on the corner was a drugstore, and it just so happened to have a soda fountain counter and would serve meals there and things. And my mother, as she would always say, was a soda jerk there. My dad, at that point was, you'll see some pictures of them. He was 6'4", 178 pounds, and graying at the temples, wearing his hat brimmed down, like you would see people doing. And so she took his order, and she came back and said, "What's your name?" He says, "Names aren't important." She said, "Well, all I'm doing is asking your name. Names aren't important." "Okay, fine, but that's all I was doing, was asking your name." "Have you ever been in a barber shop?" he said. "Oh, no, not recently." You know how the barber, when he finishes with one customer, says, "Next, next"? You remind me of a barber shop. And he got up and he left. So When my mother got off of work, she had no idea that he lived just the other side of the alley. But she decided to take the long way home in the hopes that she would run into this guy so she could tell him off. And so she's walking down Verner Highway, and he just happens to be coming back from the Rio Theater, coming the opposite way. And she comes up to him, and she says, "Listen here, you, when the right man comes along, I'll know it." Now, being early 40s, I figure a full orchestra starts playing in the background. He takes her in his arms, kisses her, and says, "At last, my darling." And 7 weeks later, they were married. So that's my unbelievable story about my parents. This was my favorite picture that my mother did. It was from a picture that she saw in a newspaper of a sailor. And as you can see, this thing is all falling apart. And literally the paper was so brittle that if you just touched it, it was breaking. So I had saved this thing for a long time and finally just had to take a picture of it before it was thrown out. Here's my parents. I wanted you to see pictures of them so you would see, when I show you the portraits of my parents that I did at 4, you would see the relationship. I put this picture in so all the women can just go, "Aw," and look at that cute little baby. And but there's more pictures of my parents. I put this picture in for a reason, and it's got a little story to it. A man was coming around the neighborhood with a little Shetland pony and cowboy outfits, taking pictures of kids. And he asked me to go ask my mother if it would be okay to have my picture taken. So I went up in the apartment and asked my mom, and she said no. So I came back down and told him yes. So a month later, she showed up. He showed up at our apartment door with this 8x10 photograph and wanting $10 for it. $10 was worth a lot more than it is now. So rather than took away my quarter a week allowance until the $10 was paid. The other reason I wanted to show you this picture is this is me at 4 years old, and this is the boy who's doing these pictures. There's my pictures of my mom and dad. I was working on 18x24 sheets of charcoal paper with pastels and charcoal. Always played tricks on my dad. And I just, made a point in this picture to show his bony shoulders. So that's why that picture. I told Eric a while ago that I had gone to see Sonja Henie at the Olympia Detroit. That next morning I had to do a picture of Sonja Henie ice skating. I always say, she must be really skating very fast here because apparently the brassiere has worked its way down below her breasts. So, but I always enjoyed the humor of this picture. Couple of boys. And the picture on the right is, when I'm 6.5, and you see the progress it's made. My mother did a good job of teaching me how to draw noses better than I used to do them. A couple more pictures. Boy praying. I guess I was 5.5 when I did that one. And I show you this horse because I just really always liked this short-legged horse. Later on, when I was working in an art studio in Detroit, based on this picture, I did this illustration. Studio owner said to me, "Why did you make it so big?" I said, "That's because one of these days when I have kids, it's going to hang on their bedroom wall." And that's what it did. And here's my copying one of my mother's nude drawings. I didn't have real good understanding of anatomy, apparently, at that point. At age 10, I started doing oil paintings. We moved to Allen Park out of Detroit in our first house. I started doing oil paintings. These are a little out of focus, but you get the idea. The thing on the right, this alleyway, I had an assignment in 6th grade to do a poster for cleanup week. And I had a picture on the left of this dirty alley, and on the right, a picture of an all cleaned up alley. The headline that I originally wrote was, get out the broom and make it snappy, clean up and don't leave it crappy. But I had to clean that up a little bit, and it was get out the broom and get it quick, clean up and make it look slick. But the picture that I liked best was the dirty alley, so I did an oil painting of that. This was I loved dinosaurs, as most kids do, and this is a Triceratops that I drew and actually won a art contest with this. I can't show you everything I'd like to show you from college, but there's a couple of things. This is a scratchboard picture of Jack Parr. I always pushed myself. I still do. And I realized that I was really doing that in college because, like in life drawing classes, when everybody would be standing or sitting drawing this nude woman from the front view so that, this was like the easiest view to do, I would go over and with her, reclining, I would go over and I would sit on the floor by her feet and draw her in this extreme foreshortening. Well, this is a picture of my dad napping on the living room floor, and I drew him from another, forced perspective. That's our old Muntz TV in the background. When I did this is an ink line drawing, and then it's colored with it's on photographic paper, and it's colored with Dr. Martin's dyes. The one picture that I wanted to show you, and I still haven't found it, was a black Prismacolor pencil rendering of a antique car that was in the Henry Ford Museum. And the thing that, it's not only got all the details of the car, but the tires, the tread of the tires read non-skid, 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 non-skid. And so all of those letters were drawn in proper perspective wrapping around the tire. I wish I could have shown you that. This is a self-portrait I did in when I was at Henry Ford Community College. This is a linoleum block print. And the colors in the background are colored tissue paper that was glued to the paper, and then the plate was printed on top of that. One of the reasons I show you this is because the next year, when I went to Wayne State University, each semester, the Wayne State University Press would come to the advertising design classes and would give an assignment of designing a book jacket for a next book they were going to be printing. So this was like the first semester that I was in Wayne State and in the advertising design class. And when they told me what the name of the book was, I knew immediately that what needed to be the illustration on the front of the book was my self-portrait. And also, I knew immediately that I was going to win. And sure enough, I did, and I got paid $50 in order to have my self-portrait on the cover of Adolescents Out of Step and Their Treatment in a Psychiatric Hospital. Another thing that I did in college, which was, I've mentioned this to some people, that I hated Letraset lettering, and everybody in the class was using Letraset lettering for anything they were doing. And they were always lousy at it. They never got the letter spacing right. They frequently had the characters that were, not square. And my problem with letter set lettering was there was too few choices of type fonts to work in. And so I learned to do hand lettering. This is all hand lettered. And the reason I'm showing this to you, again, this is me pushing myself to go beyond the point that I'm at the moment. But when I went to work at Art Group and Art Staff, and then later to Graphic House another year later, a Friday night, a rep called into the studio about 5 o'clock at night and said he's got a job that he's going to be bringing in that has to be done that night and delivered to the client in the morning. So I need the retoucher to stay. And ask Al, I was one of the apprentices. Ask Al to hang in there too, because I don't know if we're going to need anything in the mat room, but have him hang in there anyway. So the guy came after going to supper with the client about 10:30 at night. And what it was 3 front ends of American Motors cars, besides some minor retouching to the car on these 8x10 transparencies. They also wanted 1965 lettered in perspective on the license plate. And the retoucher said, well, I think we better call in Carol, the lettering person, because I mean, I can do lettering that is small and it doesn't have to be red and everything, but I don't think I can do this. I said to him, what about having Al do it? And they said, Al who? So I went back to my drawing board with one of the transparencies on a light box and a tissue over, and I started drawing a choice of 3 or 4 different fonts drawn in perspective, over the license plates in pencil. Well, they were still fretting. They came by my office. What are you doing there? And they looked and they said, "Okay, well, let's let Al do it." And so the first job that I actually had go into print in Life magazine, it was all Life, Look, Post, Automotive News, and also was the cover of their catalog that year. Was these 3 pictures? No, they don't have the lettering on the bottom one here, but it was on the catalog cover. I lettered 1965 on these license plates. This was my first job that went into my young goal of 4 of doing ads in Life magazine. I also found out about something in that studio that I had never heard of before, called retouching. What I did was I got myself an airbrush and a compressor, and they would give me the cull prints from the dye transfer prints that were being used for the job. And then I would take and I would duplicate the retouching that the retouchers had done for samples. So what you see here is on the side of this car, and this is just a stat of the color picture, but you see what they did was they pasted like cardboard panel on the side of the car, and the car was basically the same as the previous years, but they had some changes take place. So I duplicated the retouching. The chrome strips on the side of the car are brush ruled. I learned how to brush rule. If you don't know what brush ruling is, you take a wooden ruler that has a metal edge on it, and you take your paintbrush and you drag it along the top of the metal edge of the ruler while holding the ruler, almost vertical, and then paint the lines across. So I learned to brush rule so that I could take and do that. And so that was one of my retouching samples. And then this one I just retouched out part of the box in the background so that they could see that I, had done the retouching of it. Campbell Ewald in Detroit was my first agency job. I had, before going there, I had worked at Ford Motor Company in an audiovisual department for a little over a year. I was working on my master's at the time. I had my Bachelor of Fine Arts in Advertising Design. I was working on my master's, but also it was during Vietnam, and I was 287th on a waiting list to get into the reserves. And since I didn't know anybody, I figured I'd never get in. But what happened was they went through their list and picked out people according to their size and education. I was selected to be one of the first 32 drill sergeants in the Army Reserve. So I had 6 months active duty. I came home a week early because there was a delay in the training. I got permission to come home a week early because I said to them, if I wait another week, people are going to be out of college and they're already going to be going out after jobs. I really need to get back there so that I can get a job before I get married in 2 months. And so I went back. I had to buy a new sports coat and slacks because I had lost about 40 pounds. And called on Campbell Ewald and got the job I specifically wanted, which was to be on the training program in their company and working on the Chevrolet account. I wish I had the ad to show you that I did for the station wagons, that I wrote the headline. It was not an assignment, but the headline that year, because they had 3 different size cars, it all had different types of tailgates. So I came up with an ad, the headline that said, if there was only one kind of wagon buyer, we'd make only one kind of wagon. And my boss, the creative director, and they showed it to the client bought it, and it appeared in full-page color ad in Life, Look, Post, and Automotive News. The other thing I wish I could have found to show you is the taxi cab catalog that I did. And the taxi cab catalog was full color front and back cover, but inside I did it as a duotone, and it was the day in the life of a cab. And the front picture shows the cab driving out of the garage, and the back cover shows the car driving back into the garage later in the day. Everything that happens, and there's all kinds of pictures of people riding on the car, and each picture was demonstrating a different feature of the car. For the smooth ride, had a picture of a guy in the back seat holding a fish aquarium on his lap, and just a variety of things that were illustrating all these different features. And it was I was always very proud of that. But one of the things I can show you is that I did the Joey Chitwood Thrill Show that was sponsored by Chevrolet, and these are various parts that are in the kit. They're just, things that could be used as a stand-up thing. My first career mistake was to think that Syracuse, New York was closer to New York City than Detroit. The day that the General Motors was struck by the UAW, Campbell Ewald announced a number of different percentages of pay cuts for people at different levels. And so I had like a 10% pay cut for whatever length of time the strike was going to be going on. The same day I announced that I had a job in Syracuse. I only was there for 1 year, leaving what was then the largest account of Chevrolet. I went to an agency that had a $5 million billing altogether. I'm not going to show you anything from there because I have nothing that deserves being shown, but I will mention 2 things that I did there. One was one edition of Plowboy magazine for Frink snowplows, which, as you would imagine, had a bunch of double entendre things in it. The reason I had this assignment, one of the reasons I got hired there, was that the previous art director got fired because what he would do is he would go out to different bars and find women that were willing to pose nude, and then he would get the pictures taken of them, and then he'd retouch the bathing suits back on them. So I was assigned to make this Plowboy magazine a little more wholesome, but still with a lot of double entendre things. And the second thing that I can tell you about that was the thing that convinced me, Al, you've made your first career mistake, is I had to do a quarter-page ad for Hanford Teat Dip to keep cow's udders soft and supple. I was only there a year, and I went to another agency in Rochester, was there for a little over a year, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But Hutchins Y&R was a wonderful opportunity to work, and I was there for 4.5 years with a variety of things. Now, the previous agency, I actually got fired from it. And why did I get fired? Because the creative director, who was a writer, came in to my office one day and he said, Al, I think you got to find another job. And I said, gee, Ted, you mean I'm fired? Yeah. And I said, gee, I'm really sorry to hear that, because I was really planning on coming and telling you I had a job someplace else before you came and told me I was fired. I mean, you thought, I mean, you knew? I said, Ted, we should have never been married. You know, this was just not working out. So there was this job at Hutchins Y&R that was in the newspaper. And it had been in the newspaper for about 6 months, and they never hired anybody. And so they were telling me, you know, you ought to go apply for that job. I said, yeah, I can get that job, but right now I was trying to get work in New York. And he had given me a month or two because he didn't want to throw me out on the street because of my family and all this sort of stuff. And so finally it was getting down to the end of the thing. I decided to answer the ad. Now the ad specifically said, do not call, send us a letter and you know, some of your samples. So I purposely called, and I set up an appointment to see the creative director. But he decided not to see me personally, but had me see another art director there. And that art director really liked my stuff, and he said, I'd like you to leave your portfolio so I can show it to the creative director. I said, if the creative director wants to see it, I will show it to him personally. If they want me to come back on Monday, I will do that, but I'm not going to leave my portfolio here. And so that weekend, I worked on some more stuff for the portfolio. And I came in on Monday and I said, I have 2 portfolios to show you. One is to answer your ad, which was for an art director to do the PR stuff for their agency. That included a bunch of stuff, including annual reports. And then the second portfolio is to show you what I really want to do. And it was filled with all kinds of consumer ads and TV storyboards and all that sort of thing. Well, the guy said, I like the fact that you've got 2 portfolios. I like the fact that you did these things over the weekend to build up the portfolio. So I'd like you to work here. But instead of having you be the art director for the public relations, I will make public relations one of your accounts and give you other accounts to work on. So I had about 11 accounts, including the PR department. Here's some of the stuff that I did there. This is Burns-O-Matic. I always tell people the one on the left, if you're asking why these torches are on a stage, I said, well, they're singing a torch song. Ba-dum-bum. I worked on Lincoln First Bank. That was one of 3 different bank accounts I worked on. Harvard American Granby brand, made water tanks and various kinds of plumbing supplies. I did a whole lot of stuff for them, including taking a photographer and all these tanks down to Falls Creek State Park in Tennessee to have this picture taken by the falls. I did a bunch of stuff for them. When I left there, I said to the account exec, you know, I've been servicing this account more than you have, you know. He said, yeah, I know, but I said, if they ask me to take the account, I will tell them that I'm not willing to take business away from my former agency. What happened was, when I got to New York, about a month later, the chairman of the board of American Granby called me and asked me if I would take over the account because he wasn't happy with the work since I left. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that because I don't want to take work away from my former agency. And so I got a call another month later, and he said, okay, I've fired your agency, your former agency, so now somebody's got to do it. Will you please do that? So this became a freelance account while I was working at what was Compton at the time, which became Saatchi & Saatchi. I did Superba cravats, and one of the things that I found when I was trying to get work in New York was they would say things like, well, you know, I mean, you haven't worked in New York, you really don't know any of the suppliers and stuff. And so I decided, well, there's a solution for that. I'm just going to take and use New York photographers whenever I can. And so I told the client, who himself was a graduate of Art Center School out in California, that we were going to use this Bill King, this fashion photographer in New York. He says, what, are you crazy? He says, I can't afford New York photographers. I said, yes, you can. And the reason is this is business ads, not consumer ads. And secondly, you know art, so I don't have to do color magic marker comps of these layouts. I'm just going to do a pencil layout, and you can approve that, and then we'll get the stuff done in New York. So we shot with Bill King. This was a multi-page insert in Fashion Wear magazine, some trade magazine. And so this is when you first open the next page. You flip it open again, and you see this. And then you open it once more, and you see that. And that's the back cover. So I did a couple of multiple page inserts for them in different seasons, and also some individual ads, all doing stuff with Bill King. And so when I showed this stuff in New York, you know, well, you haven't had any experience. Did you art direct these things, or did you hire somebody to do it? I said, no, I came to New York and supervised Bill King doing these things. My favorite thing that I did there was Taylor Wine Annual Reports. I did 4 years of Taylor Wine Annual Reports. This was the first one that I did. And I had a tour of the winery and their facilities down there and their fields in one day. And I was so impressed by everything. I came home that night and I thumbnailed the whole annual report. Then I spent the next 3 days doing color magic marker layouts of the book. The only thing that changed from my original pencil thumbnails was this cover, because I had originally figured on having grapes on the front, but the thing was that grapes weren't ripe at the time of the photography. But this worked out to be a much better cover, because the subject for this year's annual report was the birth of a new wine. And so we started off talking about the root cuttings and being planted up in these fields, up these dirt roads, and crossing over little streams. And then we have the letter from the president, and then we continue with the story. This is a little building that was outside the vineyards. And you see here, like in the first page, where the roots are an illustration. And here we have the house and the barrel being illustrations. And this is like a 5-gallon wine bottle that was being, testing a new varietal wine. And so they had this little private tasting room that the people would go there and sample them, and they'd label them, and then they would decide, what ones were to be grown into larger fields and go into production. When I was drawing I had been on the hillside of this above Cayuga Lake, and I envisioned doing an aerial view of this. And so when I was doing the magic marker picture of this, all of a sudden I found my calves of my legs were hurting. And the reason they were hurting is because I was standing up next to my drawing board on my tiptoes, imagining what this thing looked like from the air. So then they go into full production. And then rather than just having charts in the thing, I put photographs behind the charts. And then the last spread. This was the fourth one that I did, and this was the last Taylor Wine Annual Report, because they got bought up by Coca-Cola. And so I wanted this to be a tribute to these people that I had gotten to know so well by doing these annual reports for them. They used to say to me, "We know how to make wine, you know how to make annual reports." And I would get a free hand every time on doing this stuff, just be given a subject that they wanted to cover. So I wanted this to be a tribute to everybody. So I hired a fellow by the name of Chet Jezierski, who's still working as a photographer, but he stopped doing illustrations. And I provided him with various pictures and what I wanted to be laid out. And so he did all of these illustrations, combining some photos into the illustrations. The president's letter. And this goes into the various key people in the company. This was a good friend. This was the head of the vineyards, and just a wonderful man. And one time I was giving taking some of my wife's relatives to see the vineyard, and he showed us all around in the winery itself, and then he spent like a couple of hours with us, and then he said, "Al, we're celebrating my wife's birthday today, and we've got a number of people over, so if you don't mind, I'd like to go home." I said, "You've been spending 2 hours with us doing this already." He says, "Well, you take them up in the vineyards. You know the vineyards as well as I do." So I took them up there and showed them this. And so this was the annual. There's the head taster. And then it finishes with this as the last spread. In the last Taylor Wine annual meeting, there was a stockholder that stood up and he said, "I really don't like the fact that we've sold to Coca-Cola, because I think one of the things that we're going to lose is the beautiful annual reports that we have every year that so beautifully illustrate the Taylor and Great Western." So that was, very nice. Here's the last thing I want to show you. In between the job that I got fired from and the job at Hutchins Y&R, I wrote an article about my job hunting in New York, and I sent it to Ad Age. And they not only published it with this glaring Gresswitz is looking, but did this cartoon of a guy sitting outside a personnel office with a giant portfolio. So I want to read to you this article. They introduced the article like this. Here's a report from the job front from a job hunter, ad artist. If he babbles a little, it's from talking to agency personnel directors by Albert F. Gresswitz. I'm a professional job hunter. I tell everybody I'm an art director, but most of the time I spend hunting, so I really only art direct part-time. I actually got into this business by accident. At least I think it was an accident, because no one in their right mind would have taken seriously the form I had to fill out one time for a personnel department in a large agency. I won't mention any names, but the initials were JWT. For those of you not in the advertising business, that's J. Walter Thompson. I called up the Detroit branch office, Detroit's my hometown, and asked for the personnel department. My first mistake. I've since learned that you never ask for anyone but a creative director. Personnel will get you nowhere. And be aware of the suspicious operator who slyly says, "This isn't in reference to employment by any chance, is it?" You'll end up talking to personnel no matter who you ask for. The people in personnel will say something like, "Well, the proper procedure would be for us to send you an application form, and upon us reviewing your qualifications, and if there is an opening available for someone of your background, we would then contact you to send your samples, if you have any." 2 days later, a 4-page form comes. "What foreign languages do you speak that would be of assistance in our worldwide organization?" "None." "What do you feel was the most significant contribution you made in your place of last employment?" "I made excellent tissues and flaps." I had only been an apprentice in one summer at the time. In the space provided, describe yourself in terms of personal characteristics. "Are you punctual?" "I brush my teeth at exactly 7:14 every morning." "Do you have poise, like an ox with baby booties on?" "Are you patient?" "I filled out this form, didn't I?" "Are you optimistic?" "You may still hire me." That was my second mistake. After all those smart answers, I never heard from them. This sort of thing should not stop the determined young art director to be, nor should you take seriously the people like the goateed, skin-headed studio owner who told me to get out of the business because I'd never make it. I'm 19 at the time I'm talking to this guy. Try to get a job in a big studio that can afford to take you on and see if this is really what you want. When I got my first job as an art director at Campbell Ewald, I never bought artwork from the man. Now I've been establishing contacts in New York. That's a nice way of putting it's been hell trying to find work in that town the last couple of years. Subhead: job with a guy with a heavy reel. So if a guy who hasn't quite made it yet can be a forecaster of things to come, here's how I would read the city. Things are happening. I'm not sure yet if it's from account shifts or that we're really finally pulling out of the recession, but there's work available for a select few. A job hunter friend of mine said yesterday he'd never seen such emphasis put on the book before and the reel. I called one of the hot shops the other day, didn't get past the secretary, and the girl said, with the bronx sticking out of her mouth, "Yeah, he's looking all right. You got a heavy reel? He's got to find a guy with a heavy reel." Another shop, one where anyone came from, was disappointed in my book. The CDs told me what he liked and what he was looking for, and it was really quite helpful. But his comments had to be read that they were scared, they lost a lot of business this year, and they were looking for a savior to come forth and bring them back to the shop they used to be. I can't walk on water yet. Creative man Ron Tavasano, interviewed in CA Magazine, referred to the old line art directors who waited for copy to appear under the door on a yellow piece of paper. On a TV commercial, they would lay out the storyboard, and that would be it. They weren't even allowed to go to the shoot. He said things weren't like that anymore, at least in quite a few shops. Subhead, Catch-22, initiations never stop. I know that sort of thing has been talked about ever since I started knocking on doors, but maybe it's really happening. If an art director is going to stay around, now he has to be more than a good designer. He has to be a brain. He has to have lots of ideas, lots of headlines. And if the copywriter is tied up with something else, he has to write the copy. The 70s could be the age of the art director. Now, what does all this mean to me and the other bag carriers on the block? What you have to do is take it all in. Change your thinking about being an artist and become an ad man. You'd better come up with a bunch of ideas, put them on paper in some rough way, do a lot of storyboards from your head if you can't afford to make a pilot reel like I can't, and maybe even a couple of radio spots. Then throw away all the bad ones until the select few left. If it looks like you can walk on water, show it. If you don't, keep working or be satisfied with some old line art director's job in Indianapolis. Through the years, I've developed a theory about job hunting. The ad business is a big fraternity with an initiation test. Catch-22 is the initiation test never stops. I know as soon as I start sending out resumes and making phone calls, they all get a hold of each other and say, hey, here comes that Gruswitz guy again. What do you think? Should we give him the business again or just this once a job? Will I make it this time? Can a boy from a small Midwestern town find happiness in a job in the big city? That's my story, guys.
It's great. Loved hearing it, Big Al.
Awesome. We'd love to see some of those marker comps, Big Al.
I will definitely show you some in the next round when I start showing you stuff from New York. But yeah, that was one of the things that I made a point of doing was learning how to do good magic marker comps. One of the reasons why I did was because at Compton, they had an art studio, about 4 or 5 guys that worked there, and they did all the comps. And they would put in, figure number 7 or whatever in a layout, and they all looked the same. And I said, when people look at my layouts, I want them to see the kind of person and the kind of personality that I want to have in the ad. So I would do all my own comps. So that's what I would do. I found when I was going through the annual reports, I found the magic marker layout of second Taylor Wine annual report that I did. Like I said, I did 4 of them. It's all there. And one of the things you'll see with some of the comps that I did working on Tylenol, photographers would take my layouts and trace them and put the tracing paper on the back of their large format camera in order to kind of guide them on the positioning of where they were putting stuff. And they frequently would say to me, I don't believe it. You draw everything in correct proportion. Everything is just exactly, where it should be and the right size in comparison to everything else in the picture. And that's what I would do. So again, this is like I'm still doing, pushing myself, trying to be better than I am currently at this moment. I got interviewed once by a class of kids in a fifth grade in Buffalo. Their assignment was to take and go through the directory of illustration and pick out an illustrator that they would like to write to and ask them about their artwork. Well, 3 people in the class selected me. And so they sent me these letters, and I wrote back to them, and I not only wrote back to them, but I sent them, 11 by 17 prints, color prints of whatever it was, whatever the illustration was that they were asking me about. And so I was talking to the teacher, how the kids would really appreciated the pictures and everything. And I said, well, if the kids would be interested in interviewing me, we could set up a video call and do that. So one day they set this thing up, and each of the kids would come up to the computer with a little note piece of paper in their hands with the question they wanted to ask, and they would go through the various questions. One of the girls said to me, "What's the best illustration you ever done?" I said, "That's easy, the next one." That's what I do.
Do any of your sons or grandchildren have your art talent?
My second son is an architect in New York, is being considered to be a partner in the firm because he did that big Central Park job. We worked on that for like 7 years, where they redid the pond and ice skating thing and put the building under a berm so that it just blends into everything. So he's an architect. My oldest son could really draw well as a kid, but he decided that his younger brother, who was a year younger, could draw better than him. So at that point, he decided to go into science, and he's got a PhD in molecular biophysics and is doing research up in Boston. All kinds of art supplies available to them. My youngest son, who's in his last semester in the seminary, becoming a minister, I taught him how to do photo retouching, and did well enough job that when I was doing the 43 dinosaurs for the Discovery Channel's Encyclopedia of Dinosaurs, I had work coming in and I had this job to work on, so I actually hired him to come in and do some retouching for me. And he still does websites and periodically is sending me a AI image that he's created. My fourth son has definite art ability, but his problem is he inherited his grandfather's color blindness. And so whenever I had him, he did some stuff for me also at one time, but I always had to tell him what colors, to use and everything. My oldest son is also colorblind. I would like to introduce to you my rep, Antonio Durio. He's there in the bottom. Antonio, can you turn your camera on for a minute?
Are you sure that everybody wants to see my face?
Oh, yes, I want them to see your glorious face.
Okay, let me see. Now I have to find out. Oh, okay.
There he is.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Antonio is in Lisbon, Portugal, and lives just a few blocks away from Margareta Barreto. And thanks to my introduction, he also represents her. Good man. He was working at an agency in New York where I was one of the people in their group of people. He needed to go back to Portugal to be there to help his sister and she lives in another floor in the building they're in. Antonio is a good friend, just a terrific guy, and I'm just glad that we have been together for these number of years. I wish there had been more work that came from him. He is always just wanted you to meet Antonio because he's a good friend, good confidant. People, we've gone almost a half hour over. I wish we could keep going, but like I said, we will continue on. As I posted yesterday, we've got some fabulous people coming up in the main event. Barbara here is going to be on next week. There's a fellow who is a AI film director and producer in New York City who's going to be with us the following week. And then a gentleman I just got acquainted with yesterday who's in Israel, who is an accountant. And he does wonderful storytelling with AI. We had a while back when Sarah Chevalier was on, we were talking about prompting emotions. And some people were saying, you know, they never really thought about doing that. Anyway, that's what he does. He does beautiful stuff about various emotions and various things. One of the things that he's done, which is spectacular, is a story about his father and going back to the house where his dad used to live. And as he goes in the door, he asks himself he wonders if the house remembers him. And that picture of the guy smoking a pipe and envisioning his dad over on the wall is from that story. Well worth doing that. The only problem is 12 o'clock, our time in New York, is already the Sabbath starting in Israel. And so once again, like we did with our friend Tiano in Singapore, Glenn Batkin and Eric David have agreed to participate in the recording of the interview with him on another day, and then we will play that on that Friday. You can ask me and Glenn and Eric questions about it, but well worth seeing this guy. The week after that is showing everybody what you did with the January Big Al's Big AI Challenge. I'm inviting everybody that participates in the challenge to bring the stuff that they've done and show it to everybody and talk about the experience of it. And then finally, on the 6th of February, someone I've wanted to have on for a long time. It's been a long time friend. Alexandra is the gal that does all the fabulous letter fonts and doing all kinds of things with her. She started off at the same time as I did. I started in version 2. Shortly after that, version 3 came out of Midjourney. And she would just push the program, trying to get it to make letter fonts. And I say this in my introduction to her. You and I and every AI program that's out there owes her a debt of gratitude, because if it wasn't for all of her efforts in making letter forms, these programs would never have done it. And she has just shown them how important that was to do. Now she's doing it in video and animating things. So I've asked her to come on and give us a history of her process from the very beginning to current today. So that's going to be a wonderful event. People, thank you so much for showing up today.
Thank you so much.
This was good.
I truly appreciate you all. I just am very grateful for our global community that we can be together and be supportive of each other. And that I can call so many of you not only friend, but a good friend.
Happy birthday, Big Al.
Right back
Happy
at you.
birthday, Big Al. Birthday, and thank
Love
you.
you.
Thank
Happy
you.
See you next week.
Happy birthday, my